Niremburg, I know I'm just meeting some of you for the first time. I'm very proud to be your mayor, but you do need to know about me is I'm also a very proud husband and father, and that's what drives me in this work every single day. So we are here because this is an extraordinary time for San Antonio, and if you're here on the south side, especially building a business on the south side, you know that this side of town represents not just the heritage of our city, but the future of San Antonio as well. And so the last 2 years have been extraordinary for our community. I was very proud on the first day in office that I worked with my colleagues to sign a charter, a new charter for the city. It was called a Charter for Compassion. A lot of people watched that and criticized that as being just a symbolic gesture. But what that meant for me and for our city is that we were going to do everything, whether it's planning a street budget or dealing with a new initiative on transportation or dealing with the surge of migrants from our border. We are going to first operate from a basis of compassion. That's who our city is. Yeah. So, what does that mean when we go into the basic day-to-day work of our city? It means that it shouldn't matter what side of town you live in. Politics presents us too many false choices, like we have to choose between the economy and the environment, or that we have to choose between Democrats and Republicans, or that we have to choose between the north side and the south side. So what we did for the first time in our city's history, and being the first city in the country, is that we said when it comes to the public resources of our city, everyone deserves a great city. It's been too long that communities, neighborhoods on the east side, for instance, have been languishing with stormwater, and their streets and their sidewalks have been flooded out. And it's been too long that infrastructure that's been needed to grow small businesses and to grow the communities of the south side have been waiting. So we put more emphasis. We said, if we're going to succeed as a city, the south side needs to rise. I've been a proud champion of our small business community, and you can rest assured that every day that I am mayor, that I'll be fighting for the communities of the south side, particularly those people who have the guts to open up a small business and watch it thrive. We spend a lot of time and energy and we talk about the big businesses who want to come here, and that's great. But 97% of all of our businesses here in San Antonio start as small, locally owned businesses, and we need to focus on them as well. We need to focus on them first. So here we are in the middle of May. We're in the last round of this tough re-election fight, and I'm here to tell you this is not just another election. When we wake up on June 9th, we're going to look at each other and say, what does this say about our city? What kind of city do we want to be? Do we want to be a city for everyone, for every side of town, where we are fighting for progress every single day? Or do we want to go backwards? I believe the answer is we want to make sure that every part of town, every person in this town can thrive, can achieve opportunity, can make sure that we have educational access, and that we have a business community, whether it's the south side or anywhere else in this city, can thrive. And that's why I'm running for re-election. And if there was a wake-up call that happened in May, it was that progress like that doesn't happen by itself. We all have to exercise our right to vote. We all have to get out there and make our voices heard at the polling booth. It doesn't happen on its own. And we saw how many people sat it out because they thought it didn't matter. I'm here to tell you it matters. So thank you so much for coming out today to be part of this effort. We need you to lift your voices. We need to talk to every single neighbor in this community. We're going to walk every street of this city by the time this election is over. And I will be fighting hard every single day as your mayor to continue that progress and make sure that every part of town thrives in our city. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Couple questions. The land surrounding Texas A&M was owned by, what, it still is owned by, what is it, Runoff land group? That's 700 acres, and then they got 40 acres next to us. What's going to happen with that land?
Yeah.
there for a long time.
So I think Verano is no longer. There was a court case that got that took
For the
Verano out.
TIRC,
Yeah. So I heard just recently actually that the A&M Texas A&M is working with the land owners on the other side to create a new development that can be retail, mixed housing for people locally to be part of that.
Their neighbors there.
Yeah.
They're right across the street and then they're right next door to it.
There's nothing confirmed at this point, but it's starting to happen again. That will start.
We got a serious problem on our road, Niremburg Road, of
Yeah.
people dumping trash and things like that all the time. How do we get something done about that?
Call my office. They're dumping.
Yeah, illegal dumping. I call 311 at least once or twice a week.
They're not doing anything.
They are picking it up. I mean, they should put some cameras or some lights or
Okay.
something.
Yeah.
We even had a child abducted dropped out there, near our property out there. So it's
Next
kind
time you call it in, call my office too, so we can track it, make sure that they're going to the more proactive.
yeah, and then I'd like to know what's gonna happen there, because they got 40 acres right next to it, kind of fenced line. And they don't own it, who does it, what are they gonna do with it? You know, we'd like to plan our development of our property, but we can't unless we know what they're gonna do with that property, what their timeline is.
Okay. Yeah, well, next time you call it in, call my office so we can track it.
Okay. One second.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. What are some things that you kind of do to kind of translate, let's say like older certain situations to kind of the newer generation of people, kind of make that transition or the translation to the younger generation?
Yeah. So younger voices are heard
Yes, sir.
in policymaking? Yeah, so we have a youth commission now. We actually have had a youth commission that helps us with formulating new policy to make sure that we're doing the things that young people need for the future. I've always said that young people, especially the youngest among us, have the most at stake in the decisions that we make. I mean, my job, the reason why I mentioned that I'm a husband and a father is that, you know, we have to make sure that the decisions that we make are not just about the next election, they're about the next generation. Our obligation to the future is that we leave this city a better place for these guys. So it is a sad truth that only 10%, roughly 10 to 15% of people exercise their right to vote in a city election. That's shameful. But it's the truth. Which means that every person who does have a right to vote ought to do it, but most importantly, there are more people in the city that have the right to vote and don't do anything about it at all. So if you're 18 years old or 17 years old, if you are new to San Antonio, you have just as much voice in building the city as anyone else. So that's part of the solution is making sure that it's not just about voting. It's about making sure that you have the ears and the attention of the people who are elected to serve you regardless of your vote and regardless of your age and background.
And you said it was the youth commission?
Youth commission, yeah.
Is there a way of
Yeah, I'll have my staff get in touch with you and I'll get your information for you. Yeah.
I have a question.
Okay.
Well, you mentioned about the north-south divide, and we're here trying to help bridge that divide as well, supporting the south side, small businesses. But how does the city decide how much money the north side gets versus the south side? I mean, is that not balanced? It sounds like it's not balanced. How do you restore the balance?
Yeah, so we all know there are historic inequities in this community, and some of them based on racist policies that have been long ruled unconstitutional. They're no longer on the books, but it means that today in San Antonio, we live with that legacy, and many parts of town have unequal infrastructure, have decaying sidewalks and streets because of choices that were made a generation ago. So the way politics works, the expedient way to do things is that because we have 10 city council districts, the way we've been doing things for a generation is we just divide everything up by 10 and everybody gets 1/10 of everything. If you start from an unequal place, from inequity, and you basically have everybody have the same thing moving forward, you never restore equity in a community. So for the first time in our city's history, the group of city council members showed a little bit of political fortitude and said, we got to do things differently. So we allocated in our street budget, just as an example. We allocated a basic budget, and then we increased the budget, but rather than cutting everything up by 1/10, we said we're going to focus the resources where they're needed the most. And we do that on community input and basically on the condition of the infrastructure, engineering conditions of the infrastructure. So we focus more of that money, for instance, on the south side and on the east side, because that's where infrastructure was most needed. And that's the basis for equity, is that you've all seen the picture of the children trying to look over the wall to watch the baseball game. One child is this tall, one child is that tall, and one child is, 2 feet tall. And they all have a stack of boards. Well, equality would mean everybody gets to stand on the same number of boards and look over the fence. If that's the case, 2 of the kids won't be able to look over the fence. So we work with those resources like those stacks of wood, and we make it so that everybody gets to appreciate and be part of the progress, be part of the opportunity, and that's how we do it. And we do that not just with street maintenance, but also with police and fire services, and with park and library services. We put the resources where they're needed the most and where they have the most impact. That's how you budget a household. Unfortunately, politics in most places doesn't work that way. I'm happy to say it works that way in San Antonio now. And that's what's on the ballot. Yes, sir.
I appreciate the fact that you solicit our input about where we want our actions to be taken and what's coming up with VIA and such. I did not become aware of the fact that public transportation was so helpful until I had to do without a car.
Yeah.
And so I have seen improvements, which I appreciated. But I think the sign of a truly progressive city is one where public transportation is the first choice for everybody, not necessarily for those that can't afford a car. Anyway, what's on the horizon in terms of public transportation for San Antonio?
I really appreciate that question. Transportation reform is probably the most important thing we can do from an infrastructure standpoint moving forward. I launched Connect SA precisely for that reason. We have to make sure that we're building a transportation system that works for everyone. That's part of equity as well. There are many parts of town where there's a large number of people who have to use the bus. That's what they depend on to get to school and to get to work. And without an adequate bus system, they lose hours a day that could be spent with their families, doing homework, just spending time together. And that's lost opportunity, that's missed opportunity. So one of the first things that we did when I became mayor is we put an improvement to those particular routes onto the budget, and we funded it. And now ridership is up 30 to 40% on those routes, just on those routes in VIA. So it works. When we invest in public transportation, people use it. So Connect SA is our citizen-led initiative to totally reform transportation in San Antonio. So not that public transportation needs to be your first choice, but at least it can be a choice. And so Connect SA will be on your ballot next year to fund improvements to the bus system, coordinated improvements to the roadways, to the pedestrian network, to safe bicycle routes, and ultimately to a mass transit system for San Antonio, the first ever in our city's history. We need your help with that. That's another very clear difference, and another thing that's on the ballot this year in terms of your vote for mayor. My opponent has said he wants to gut Connect SA, and he's going to give more money that, not sure which tree that's going to grow out of, to just the bus system, which is an important part. But if you don't have the money because you're going to give it to lucrative contracts, something's got to give. So if you want transportation reform, you want a strong public transportation system, please vote for Ron on June 8th.
First of all, thank you for coming to our little humble abode.
I'm reminded that I need some.
As medical marijuana passed this in Texas, and small business owner as myself, how is that gonna help someone like myself, those legalizations in San Antonio? What's the stance on that for helping small businesses to help those people, not just big corporate coming in, pharma coming in, to help regulate those within our city?
Yeah, well, I was pleasantly surprised, I'll say, that the legislature finally acted on something that has been talked about, and they've actually been talking about for almost a decade, which is expanding the compassionate and legal medical uses that are allowed by law. So fully support that. We need to continue with that. In addition, San Antonio needs to focus its public safety resources on people who are actually dangerous to the public. So I do support a fully implemented site release program as well. But I think this is one step forward to what you're talking about. It's largely a state-regulated system. But we have now finally a more forward-looking approach to it at the local level and at the state level. I love what the district attorney's office now is bringing in terms of the focus on more restorative and restitutional-based criminal justice. So I look forward to the next session and seeing how that can be further expanded so that, again, we allow for more opportunity and focus public safety where it really needs to focus.
Thank you.
I think that's all the time you have for questions, but you're gonna walk around, you're gonna eat, you're gonna
Yes,
do
I
a little bit of
am. I saw the dogs outside and I saw the coffee inside.
So really quickly, I just want to remind people that early voting starts on Tuesday, so enjoy your Memorial Day and then get out and vote for Ron. He needs every single vote. There is an event, thank you Annabelle for reminding us, there's an event at Nietzsche's restaurant on Roosevelt. Eat breakfast and then walk across to Mission Library to go cast your vote. We're encouraging people on Tuesday to go do that. I think it starts at 9, 8:30 to 10. So just to do that, yes? Yes, of course.
I can't impress upon you enough how important this election is. And I don't want to oversell this, but this is absolutely true. We have woken up before, the day after an election, and looked in the mirror and said, what happened? This is a blessing that we're in a runoff. Some people say we shouldn't be in a runoff. But this is a blessing because we are reminded that if we're going to make progress in our community, some generational progress, if we're going to be a city that actually says, you know what, the historic inequities are not our fault today, but we should do something about it. If we're going to be a city like that, we've got to fight for progress. We were reminded about that on May 4th. This election can be stolen away from us because there are a couple special interests that want to do that want to have political control of City Hall. And I'll just be plain about that. But we don't have to let that happen. This election is not one on TV. It's not even one on social media. It's one by knocking on doors and talking to our neighbors, just like it was a long time ago. And we need your help. We really need your help. So please talk to your neighbors, grab some literature, and please help us every single day grind away to make sure that people are informed about how important this election is, and let's go win on June 8th.